Don't want to give money to the oligarchs, but love lobbing Scorchers? Do we have a deal for you? MLS Season Pass is back on Apple TV with access to every single MLS match, including Leagues Cup and the entire Audi MLS Cup playoffs with no blackouts. It's not just the games, you get total access to the pre- and post-match MLS 360 whip-around show in both English and Spanish, and get live look-ins and highlights from around the league, as well as full match replays and recaps. Now, you can support our show by visiting lobbingscorchers.com/Apple TV to purchase your subscription and support our show.
lobbingscorchers.com/Apple TV. Please, don't let the oligarchs win.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of Under the Lights. We've got a banger stream for you all tonight. Really looking forward to this one. It's kind of like a outside the norm show. You know, I feel like we mostly focus on Seattle Sounders around here, obviously, and do some league-wide coverage. But we're going to be diving into some unexpected U.S. men's national team punditry to start off the show tonight. I was not planning on this. I was working the game tonight for the MLS website, but I wasn't that interested in it, to be quite honest. I figured they would win relatively easily. They were heavily favored against Panama, and I think some of you probably know, but others might not. I've had a strained relationship with my former USMNT fandom in recent months. We did a whole video about how we were defecting to Canada, which a lot of people called that clickbait, which we would never do that. We would never clickbait. But in reality, my feelings towards the USMNT lately have been apathy more than anything passionate to the point of defecting or anything. I just think that a lot of the discourse around that team got way too hot compared to how interesting and relevant the team was. I think the team very clearly hasn't been that relevant for a while. So I really wasn't planning on diving into this game, but then the game happened, and the ending was really funny, guys. That was I mean, even if you're a diehard USMNT fan, you should be able to admit that was funny. You should be able to admit that was funny. But I mean, I'll just tell you guys my thoughts to start off. Tell you guys my thoughts while I was watching that game, which was that honestly the main thing that was going through my head was that this pretty much looks like the same team that we saw with Greg Berhalter. Like, what's different about this? What's different about the players who are on the field? What's different about how they're playing? I would say, if anything, it was like a little worse. It was actually like worse than how we played under Berhalter. So that was my thought. But I was like, they're probably going to win, but like, what is the like newness to it that we're supposed to be seeing right now? What is different about this compared to the team we've been watching for the last few years? And I think that was an important question, because we spent years and years listening to people talk about how terrible a coach Greg Berhalter is. He's awful. He's an MLS coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. If we just get a good coach, they'll get the most out of the golden generation. And Pochettino was billed as the big name, successful coach that Greg Berhalter wasn't. And a guy like this is what can get the most out of the golden generation. Now let's talk about the golden generation at first, because I'm pretty much at the point where I consider that total propaganda at this point. Like, you're not the golden generation until you provenly show that you are a lot better than the generations that came before you. Like, has this core of players, this player pool, really shown that at all? Like, what have they done? What have they won? What have they proven that makes them any better than the years where it was Clint Dempsey, Landon Donovan, and a bunch of MLS lifers. Nothing. They really haven't. You have to perform on the field to get the title of Golden Generation, which they have not done. But needless to say, Poke was billed as the guy who would get the most out of the Golden Generation. And I mean, as someone who doesn't care about this that much anymore, like I got to say, the early returns from the Poke era, I'm a little not sure like what he's bringing to the table. I'm just saying. I'm not saying that this result alone or how things have been going under him so far define his tenure by any stretch. You know, he should probably get a degree of the benefit of the doubt. But I'll just tell you like what I've seen that makes me raise my eyebrows a little bit. The thing he did where he was calling in the guy who played in the men's league. This guy was on the on CF Montreal, and he signed up for a local men's league in Montreal, which you're not allowed to do. So he used a fake name to sign up for a rec league and was just out there playing against random civilians, and then crashed out so hard on the field in the rec game that he like spit on, he lost it. He like spit on somebody. He was throwing punches or something. He got kicked out of the rec league in Montreal. And Montreal terminated his contract, and I never heard of this dude again. That's the only thing I knew about him. The next time I saw this guy, Poke had called him in and was playing him in a USMNT. I think it was a friendly, but still, I was like, why? I didn't even know that guy was US eligible. What is the men's league guy? What is he doing with the USMNT? But I was like, maybe Poke knows something about this guy that I don't. I've, to be fair, never really heard of him, never watched him play. All I know about him is he punched a guy in a men's league. But then he went out there, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that it was one of the worst USMNT shifts I've ever seen. He was terrible. He looked like he didn't belong on the field. And I was like, okay, this is kind of a bad look for the coach. This is a bad look for the coach. He calls this guy in who no one knows. Like, people didn't even know he was US eligible. He comes in, his only legacy on the sport is punching a guy in a men's league game, getting terminated by CF Montreal. Then he goes out there and looks like this. What is the coach doing there? What are we talking about? What are we doing? And then at the very end of that game, the men's league guy scored like an admittedly incredibly sick goal. And I think that goal salvaged the optics of the situation, because it was like, oh, okay, like he can do that. That's why he got called in. Poke gets he might have cooked there actually. But that really should not have salvaged the optics of that situation. That was a weird call up. Are we really to believe that the men's league guy has the CF Montreal men's league guy has a serious chance at becoming a meaningful contributor at the senior international level? Maybe, but I seriously doubt that. But so that was the first thing where I was like, Poke, what is this? Like, what is this? Again, what are we doing? But whatever, like I said, don't care much about this anymore. Do your thing, Poke. Live your truth. Call in whoever you're going to call in. But then we get this game tonight where it's a Nations League semifinal game, which is like I think this Nations League, who knows what it is, who cares about it. But like, I think for people who do care, this was an important thing in sort of like establishing a foundation, maybe getting some momentum for the Poke era. We're hosting the World Cup. Like, let's go win Nations League, have a galvanizing performance in the semifinals, go win the final. It would set up a matchup with Canada or Mexico. And then we go out there and play like that. Like, it was let's be real. Like, I'm not being a hater to say that was a terrible performance. Like, even before they gave up the winner, like, boring, not creative, no different than anything we watched the last like 5 years. If anything, it looked like we regressed it looks like we regress. And that would have been true no matter how the game ended. And then it ends like that, which was a really funny concession. Just terrible defending. People were getting on Matt Turner, rightfully. I don't know what Matt Turner was really trying to do there, but like, sort of like the discussions we had with the Sounders last year. You can blame the defense and blame the goalkeeper for conceding the one goal in a game, but you really you're going to play Panama at SoFi in a Nations League semifinal and you're not going to score. They got close, to be fair, I guess. Josh Sargent really got close twice in the first half. There was one really good chance that McKennie gave to him, and it got deflected and then went off the post. Unlucky. And then he actually scored one where Tim Weah was way offside. So Sargent, but I was just looking at a post. I'll see if I can find this. There's a really funny list of strikers that have scored goals for the USMNT since Josh Sargent scored his last one for the USMNT. Yeah, all right, here I found it. This is a list of strikers that have scored since Josh Sargent scored his last goal for the USMNT. Uli Lanes, barely know who that is. Ayo Akinola, I know who that is. He's not that good. Nico Giacchini, I know who that is. Not that good. Oh, it's not even strikers. This is just players. Reggie Cannon, know who he is. Not that good. Sam Vines, know who he is. Not that good. Giassi Zardes, goddamn USMNT legend, the only respectable striker that this country has had in the last 10 years. Seriously. Where Berhalter, justice for Berhalter, man. Justice for Berhalter. Berhalter was cooking. If we just let him keep going, we could have avoided all this. Anyway, it's a difficult day for the bots, guys. It's a difficult day for the bot. If you go look at the bot community right now, they're roiled in scandal and chaos and turmoil. I quit Twitter, so I actually don't. I kind of realized that, because I quit Twitter, I don't have to deal with the bots at all. It's kind of nice. Before we continue, I guess I should probably shill a little bit. I forgot to shill at the top of the show. Please like the video. Please sub to the channel if you haven't already. Liking the video really helps us out, boosts us in the algorithm. Sub to the channel if you haven't. And then also, all we need tonight is one YouTube member, and it will put out another little emoji thing that you can put in the chat, like the Rothrock ones and the ones that are of us and stuff. We'll put out another one, and I think it's between Jesus Ferreira and Jordan Morris, I want to say. So if we get one YouTube member, we'll put out another one, and then whoever that YouTube member is gets to pick the new emoji that we put out. Noah? Correct if any of that is wrong, but I think that is correct. And yeah, I think that's all the shilling that I need to do for now. If you got any thoughts on the USMNT crash out, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Probably stay on this for a couple more minutes. We got Houston Dynamo previewing tonight. I'm going to bring on my friend Jesus Acevedo Jr., who's a Dynamo expert, longtime Dynamo expert at around 8. Talk some Houston Dynamo, talk some Nico Ladero. And then later on in the show, I had some Schmetzer sound I wanted to dive into. Schmetzer responded, guys, to the Jesus Ferreira discourse. I don't know if he was responding to our pod. I know he listens to the pod, so I think he was. But Nico asked him a question about the Ferreira stuff, and Schmetz gave what I thought was an interesting answer. So we're going to talk about that. and do a little Club World Cup discourse. Got people discoursing about the Club World Cup. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, I think, at the end of the show. That was pretty much it. So, yeah, Tacoma Defiance is playing right now. Feel free to keep me updated on that. I got to send a message to Jesus real quick. Yeah. Funny stuff from the USMNT. Funny stuff. I think what it shows to me, man, is that what I was talking. Remember the USMNT punditry that we used to do? And I would talk about how this coach discourse is pointless. It was pointless the whole time. That's what I was trying to tell people. I was trying to tell people that Berhalter or no Berhalter, the calculation is pretty much the same, like based on what the player pool is, which is not as good as people have built it. That's pretty clear to me at this point, that the issue is not the coach, that coaches are not getting the most out of the golden generation. The issue is that it's not a golden generation. It's a generation that's got some pretty good players, I guess. That's what they should officially rebrand this as. We are the generation of some guys that are pretty good. We got like 3 or 4 guys that are pretty good. That's what we got. Which the Dempsey Donovan days, there was a lot more. It was better days. USMNT needs more hard MLS players over the soft Euro-based players. So I know you're saying that like slightly tongue-in-cheek, but the thing is, when you're playing a CONCACAF opponent, there's an argument to be made that more MLS representation actually, like a lot of MLS players are playing in CCC. They know what's up with these CONCACAF games. These guys that are playing in Europe, they're not used to this smoke. They're used to a different kind of smoke. CONCACAF smoke is different. I'm just saying. Poke, I think too, like, to be fair to Poke, he understands that that's why he called in 9 MLS guys. I bet, I bet that's what the bots are saying. Bet that's their big talking point. He called in 9 MLS guys. That's why none of our players who play in Europe could score even 1 goal against Panama. That's why Josh Sargent hasn't scored for this team in like 5 years. The USMNT Euro guys play for mid-level Euro clubs, and only a few are regulars at that. Yeah, exactly. Like, when they were billed as a golden generation, it was like, oh, Pulisic's at Chelsea, Gio Reyna's at Dortmund. Ooh, like, look how good they are. Pulisic had one stretch for Chelsea, I'll say, where he looked like one of the best wingers in the Prem. He did. It was the COVID year. He was going off. Other than that, I feel like he's been pretty good, but not like the greatest player I've ever seen. He's been fine, I guess. He's been good for Inter Milan. Pulisic is as much as I don't really care for the guy, he's a baller. But then you start to think Weston's a little overrated. Played okay tonight. Nothing special, really. Tyler Adams had a quote like last year where he said, like, when I'm healthy and at my best, I'm one of the best holding mids in the world. He's not. That is just not true. He's fine. He's good. I don't think he's bad. One of the best holding mids in the world. He is not that. He's not. Pulisic isn't anywhere like close to an amazingly elite player in Europe. He's good. Knew I loved Lobbing Scorchers when you brought USMNT fraud squad into my vernacular. Exactly. It's the fraud squad. They did absolutely nothing to disprove that moniker? Absolutely nothing. In fact, it's more reinforced than ever at this point, sadly. Josh Sargent is a mid striker. I don't even know if he's mid. I guess he so he's been playing for Norwich in the championship, and he's been playing well. He's been banging in goals for them. But I haven't seen him. What has he done for the US in the last 5 years? Looked okay tonight. Put one off the post. Had one offside goal. Okay, he looked okay. None of them counted. They literally didn't count because, or the offside one literally didn't count. USMNT played like Sounders, can't score. Too soon, Reese. Too soon. I don't really know. I don't think I really had much more USMNT punditry other than that. It was I'm not gonna lie. I laughed. I laughed when Panama scored. That's where I'm at. Don't really like our players that much. It's not even about players. As guys, don't really like them that much. That's part of where my disillusionment with that team came from. Don't care for them as guys, and also don't think they're that good of players. That I think is kind of indisputable at this point. There's some okay players, but that's about all I'll give them. I'll show you guys the recap I wrote, though. It's not super exciting, but if you want to go click on it, MLSsoccer.com. That always helps me out. Uh-oh, am I frozen, though? I think I might have froze. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. I was frozen on my screen, so I don't know if you guys saw that. Here's my story. CONCACAF Nations League stunner. Pulled a little Chris P photo right there. I actually pulled that before they lost, but it turned out to be kind of appropriate because Buddy's got a tough facial expression there. That's on MLSsoccer.com if you want to go read all about it. Laugh 2 European players playing South American teams. Do we need separate continental teams? I don't know. I don't know what we're gonna do. I just think it's funny that like Poke is the exact coach that the bots were saying for years. Berhalter is the problem. Berhalter. Damn you, Berhalter. We have this golden generation of players that seem pretty good, but actually aren't that good. How dare you, Berhalter? If anything, Berhalter was getting more out of these guys. I'm on fire now. This is gonna get clipped up. Berhalter was getting more out of these guys than Poke's been getting. Berhalter was overachieving. That's the new take. J-Mo buries that Ajimong chance. Exactly. With the bum hamstring. We're all cooking off this. I love it. Great stuff. Should have my buddy Jesus Acevedo Jr. popping on here in about 5 minutes to talk some Houston Dynamo. Gonna get into Seattle Sounders stuff after that. I just feel like I had to do the USMNT punditry because that just happened. So that's sort of the topic of the moment. And also, I'm not gonna say I feel validated, but I do kind of feel validated. This is what I was trying to warn the bots the whole time. You can go back and look up plenty of clips where I said you can put whatever coach you want in there. That's not the problem. It's not the problem. The problem is that the golden generation isn't that golden. spot on with focusing on more MLS players in the squad. They're hungrier and scrappier than European silver spoons. Yeah, like I really think there's something to that, man. I really think there's something to that. Like, why is it? Why do we think it is? Why do we think it is that this team honestly performed better when it was built around Dempsey, Donovan, and the boys? The Graham Zeusies, the grinders, you know? Why is it that they performed better and got better results? I don't know. That's for Poke to figure out. That's not my problem. My boys are playing right now. Canada. Honorary Canadian. We did kind of a bit, you know, about how we were honorary Canadians, which I don't know if it works like that. I don't know if you can claim citizenship like that. But like, see, Canada, that's a team I can get behind. That's a team that I can get behind. That's a coach I can get behind. Those are strikers I can get behind. I have Canadian envy. Jesse Marsch is phenomenal. Like his have you guys seen his quotes when they ask him about whether he wanted or would have taken the U.S. job? They've asked him a few times. This Jesse, did U.S. Soccer ever approach you about that job, and were you considering taking that job? And he goes, absolutely not. Don't want that job. They talked to me about it, but I don't want anything to do with that federation. Those guys have no idea what they're doing. It's one of the most poorly run institutions I've ever seen. If they had made me an official offer, I would. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but that's basically what he's saying. That's basically what he's saying. He has no problem going off like that. No problem. And honestly, Jesse Marsch, if they had made that hire, that might have actually cooked. That's a coach who's shown a track record of getting teams to punch above their weight, you know? Like, I don't know that much about Poke. I just know he's a big name. But it's big name coaches, it can be kind of hard to assess sometimes. Like Pep, for instance. It's like a situation where I look at it and I'm like, he's obviously a great coach. He's a really good coach. But he's also getting the best players in the world at every position, you know? So I think sometimes when you're hiring off name value, which, let's be real, like that's what U.S. Soccer was doing in this situation. They were like, we're getting pressure from all angles to like just make a big splashy hire, and that's who was available and who they landed on. I don't think doesn't seem to me that they vetted the hire at all, which maybe with a name that big, you don't need to, but when you make a hire and you don't investigate for yourself if the guy's good or not, that can be what happens. Marsch would be an interesting choice to replace Schmetz when the day finally comes. Not sure that would ever happen, though. I would, if we're talking about Schmetz successors, I would love that. I mean, you know, we're partial to Canada, but I'm a Jesse Marsch fan. Needs to say fuck it and throw Jason Sudeikis in there. Seriously. Think of the vibes if they literally tried to hit Ted Lasso it. I would watch that. I would be excited to watch that. I watched this one tonight because I had to. I don't think I would have watched if I wasn't working it. Like that's how I feel about it. Go get Tata. That was a thing for a while. But that's the thing. Like Tata, if you ask me, Tata is a good coach, but he coached Mexico. How did that go? Not very well. You know what they should really do? They should let me do it. I'll coach the USMNT. I could have got them. I could have gotten to the CONCACAF Nations League final. I could have. I would motivate the boys. It's funny stuff. Funny stuff. How are you guys feeling about the Nico Ladero revenge game? Switching topics real quick, going back to the Seattle Sounders. Nico Ladero coming back to Lumen Field as a member of the opposing team. That's going to be weird. It's going to be emotional. And it looks like we've got Jesus Acevedo jumping in right now. So we're going to bring him on to talk some Houston Dynamo. Jesus, if you can hear me, go ahead and give me a little thumbs up and I'll bring you on. Looks like you can't hear me. Can't hear me yet? So I'm not going to bring him on yet. See, that's why you do the thumbs up. That's why you do the thumbs up. Jesus, when you can hear me, give a wave and an indicator. We'll get you on to talk some Houston Dynamo and the fighting Ben Olsen's second year in charge at the Houston Dynamo. And he actually kind of cooked last year. This year, not going so well. All right, Jesus has got give me the thumbs up now. We're going to bring him in right now. Everybody, please welcome to the show Houston Dynamo expert Jesus Jr. Jesus used to be the Dynamo beat writer for MLS back in the day. Still around the team a lot, follows the team day in, day out. Here to give us all the insight. Jesus, it's been a while. Good to see you, man. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Ari. I gotta say, it's been a while. I think this is our first time, I guess, face to face, even digitally, that we've talked to each other. We've talked to each other on Twitter a lot, email and whatnot. So good to, I guess, meet you, as they like to say.
Exactly. Great to meet you. We really appreciate the time joining the show, and yeah, I'm eager to talk to you about some Houston Dynamo.
Yeah.
There's a lot of subplots with this game this weekend as they come to Seattle. I was just talking before you hopped on about the return of Nico Ladero. I think that's going to get most of the headlines. But what I like to do when I have someone on who's from another market, I like to give my take on their team from the outsider's perspective, lay that down, and then you tell me if my take on the club from the outside is accurate or if you would amend anything about the take. So I'll hit you with that right now, which is Houston Dynamo. Okay. What I perceive of the Houston Dynamo is a club that had unexpectedly really good year last year, first year under Benny O. And honestly, it wasn't just about the results with first year under Benny O. It was like how they were doing it. One of the most fun teams to watch at times last year, how the Dynamo would slice and dice people. There was just these really great team goals, great team ball. And they ended up being a solid playoff team. Good hard fought series against Seattle. Honestly, it was like 2 penalty kick defeats, right? But it felt like at the end of last season, like the Dynamo were really building something. But this year has gotten off to a not good start at all. Ache has not been replaced, and it seems like there's kind of a lot of questions going on right now if the whole thing is headed in the right direction. Would you say that all of that is accurate, or would you amend anything about that take?
Probably the whole take, if I'm being honest. Sorry. First of all, there's some truth in what you said, right? But just to kind of last year was Ben Olsen's third year. Second year. So we're in his third year now.
It was his second year. Okay.
Yeah, because his
factually inaccurate.
Yeah, factually inaccurate. So that's what I'm saying. Just because of that, I guess everything else, maybe you want to change what you say, right? But
no, it was a good year.
The first 2 years have been a good years. They won the U.S. Open Cup under Ben Olsen at Miami.
Yeah.
And then last year they made and then that same year made that run to the Western Conference Finals, and then last year made the playoffs again, second year. But both years, yes, they play beautiful soccer, as you say. A lot of the MLS sickos, as we like to call them, like the Dynamo for their style of play. That, like you said, good passing triangles. That was spot on what you said. Yes, it was. And they haven't been able to replace that yet. No Ache replacement, no Coco replacement. But I think the most important was probably the Mikael replacement, which was their center back, which I know that's someone I don't think you mentioned.
No, I
He's
didn't.
like a best 11 caliber center back. Like,
Yeah.
Matt Doyle, one of the, original MLS cycles, he gives him high praise. Like, and there's others like that have given him high praise. I mean, $5 million, Palmeiras came in and wanted to buy him. I think he's been a big loss that they haven't been able to replace, and that's what they've had a lot of goals conceded already this season. So yes, they haven't been able to replace what left, pretty much, Nachi being the key piece, just because, Hector Herrera, he's the name, right? The marquee name that they had. But yeah, so like I said, there was some truth in what you said, some truth.
All right. Well, I think I had some accurate there, but yeah, I mean, obviously, not Ben Olsen's first year. It was his second year. But like for me, when Ben O got hired, I think a lot of people were kind of skeptical because his DC teams were known for playing kind of boring ball, and that was not the case at all. His first couple years with the Dynamo. I had a couple players I wanted to ask you about,
Yeah.
but before that, what is your read on what happened with Ache? Because it seemed like he was a pretty clear centerpiece, best 11 player, and then it seemed like there was maybe some kind of falling out, or like why did he end up leaving the club, to your knowledge?
From what I gather, I mean, it was an option year where the Dynamo had the option to pick up his contract for the next season. I think most expected that they were going to pick up the option. I mean, just for every reason that you mentioned, right? Like, why wouldn't you? You had 2 good seasons, beautiful soccer finally from the Dynamo, and that was the expectation. Obviously, even with how the season ended for him, red card, we know. That was the expectation. So I think it was, at least for me, I'll say, I was a bit surprised when that news happened. But from what I gather, I think to me it came down to a money situation where perhaps they didn't want to pick up that, option on his contract year based on how many games he played that season. Too, he's an older player too, so I'm pretty sure they took that into account. And I think maybe they may be second guessing where they made this move thinking they could get not a like for like replacement, but at least put that money to use to better the team, right? As opposed to pay one player this high money, spread it among two players. They have yet to do that, So that's why we're in this predicament where they started off the season. But that would be my best assumption as to why they didn't want to, continue on and give them that option year.
Well, so it seems like what happened is that the idea was to find a replacement that ended up being Jack McGlynn. Would you say that is sort of how they were thinking of that maybe not as an exact like for like, but in that role as the midfield orchestrator?
To an extent, I mean, what you lose in Ache, I mean, yes, you gain some offense, but you also gain some soccer IQ on the defensive end, and I think that's something where Jack McGlynn is still growing on that aspect of his game, right? And we've seen it already in these early games. He can cross the ball, he can send in some great corner kicks, can slipping passes, but on the defensive end, sometimes that's where he needs to up his game. And I think that's where Ben Olsen's going to help him out a lot. Is just like you mentioned, Ben Olsen at his DC teams, they had a good defense. They will grind out games, So has been a departure from here because they still do that, but now they have more of a possession-based game too as well. So I'll say he's one of those pieces, but then they're still missing that other piece. And I know there's rumor. I know Tom Boger kind of dropped the news that the Dynamo are talking to a player, which could be a DP 2.6 million. I'm not even going to begin to butcher his name, Ari. So, but there's been some mixed reaction because he's not a player that's, I guess you can say, hitting it off right now at his current team and the Fibonacci, I think, is in Netherlands. So we'll see, right? But they're still missing that piece. That I guess that Ache hole they left. But again, you got to also add that Coco hole, Coco Carrasquilla, who we just saw great assist. You saw exactly what he did. That's what the Houston Dynamo are missing, right? So and then again, I'll say again, Mikael. I think Mikael's absence cannot be understated. Like out of those three, I think Dynamo fans would prefer that he stayed out of those three. You know, everything played out. I mean, because Coco wanted, not that he wanted to leave, but he had bigger aspirations, and a good offer came in. And we just spoke about Ache, but Mikael, at least you would at least have some kind of stability to your back line, to your defense.
Wanted to ask you about Ezequiel Ponce as well. That I feel like that's always one of the key characters in a game against the Dynamo. I'll give you my outside perspective on him, which is that clearly an extremely talented player with a lot of pedigree, and I feel like he's looked really, really good at times, but it maybe hasn't been consistent yet. Would you say that's accurate way to describe where he's at?
Yes. Consistency. Yes, I think that's fair. He scored his first goal, great header. I just think he's not getting the service that maybe he's used to, that he was getting overseas, perhaps. Even the Dynamo have had a bad start. You've seen little spurts of what Ponce can do. The goal mentioned in the last game was actually a good indicator of that. There was some moments when he was in the box, when he was almost dancing with the ball, creating stuff for his teammates and then getting open. But there just hasn't been enough of that. Going back to what you're saying, that consistency, and being a DP player, the most expensive player the Dynamo have ever signed. It's the fans want more. As I'm sure Seattle. You guys got a player Vega, if I'm not mistaken. The fans want more out of that, right? You're a DP signing, like we want more out of you. So I think this was his first off season with the team. So here's hoping that this is just the early season, ongoing to the MLS season, and hopefully he, is the player that the Dynamo ended up paying for.
Just got a couple more for you, Jesus, and then I'll get you out of here. I do have to ask you about Nico Ladero. Obviously, a legend around here. I think most people agree that he's the GOAT sounder, just in terms of what he provided on the field, but also just as a standard setter and a tone setter off the field and in the locker room. Really, you can't name that many DPs in the history of this league that have hit quite like he did, when you consider just what he brought to the team and also the trophy haul that he ended up getting while he was here. He's obviously not the player that he once was, but I thought last year with Orlando, he had a pretty solid year. He still had double-digit assists and looked good at times. Now he ends up going to Houston. What have you seen from him so far, I guess, first on the field, but then also, do you have any sort of impressions as to what impact he's making with the team, like internally?
I'll answer the second question first. I haven't had a chance to actually speak with them yet this season, or get a sense of how, even with the other teammates, how how that's going. But I mean, I you see some of the connection that he's starting to build on the field, and I mean, you see what's made him, as you say, one of Seattle's GOATs. You see it, in spurts. Even when he started the season off from the bench, when he would come in, you could see that, these like little moments, and you can see how sometimes his mind is already thinking two passes ahead. Like he'll point, he's like he's already seen. You know what I mean? I mean, I see him shaking your head because he's already seen two passes ahead. But sometimes the Dynamo players that are currently constructed, they're not seeing that, so they'll play the safe pass, and he's like, you can kind of see like a little frustration. But I think it's also getting to know the players too, also, right? One of the best, not best, but one of the quotes that has stuck in my mind over this early season for Ben Olsen is like, he's saying, we've had such great turnover, is pretty much what he was saying, and then he's saying, we have to figure out what kind of team we are going to be, So that just tells me that they're still figuring it out themselves. Like, we've been talking through this whole conversation. Ache, Coco, Mikael, Steve Clark, we haven't even talked about, right? Keeper. So what team do we want to be is pretty much what he's saying, and that's what they're trying to discover. And he's relying on Nico Lodero right now, to be that number 10. As they got two wings out, Nelson Quinones, young Colombian winger, fast, and Lawrence Inali, German winger, came into the league and like lit it up in like one game, and then he got hurt, unfortunately. So those two are expected to hopefully come back in the second half of the season. But so I wouldn't be surprised if the Dynamo are relying on Nico Lodero a lot more in this early half of the season. Then perhaps they envision, I'm sure they envision him maybe just coming off the bench, a spark plug, similar to what he did with Orlando last year.
Do you think he starts this game? I feel like he has to, right?
Oh yeah, he has to start. He has to start, and then I'm sure he'll come off in the 75 minutes to everybody
Yeah.
standing ovation. I mean, I'm sure of it. I mean, Ben Olsen. He knows what Nico Lodero has meant to this league. Like you mentioned.
All right, last one, Jesus, and then we'll let you go. What do you think is a reasonable hope or expectation for the Dynamo in this game? It's obviously, I feel like this series between these two teams, it always heavily favors the home team. Like whenever Seattle goes down to Houston, it's a hard time. Whenever Houston comes up here, it's a hard time. Are you looking at this game and thinking that this is just a smash and grab, try and get a point and get out of there type situation? Or I mean, with Houston's record, what it is right now, which is like what 0-3-1 or something like that. Like, do you feel like this is a situation where they're desperate enough where they're going to be playing like hair on fire and going for the win?
I think I saw the stat with 14-4 at Seattle for the Houston Dynamo.
Something like
so
that.
So they've never won. I don't quite see it in this game, but I do see them getting a draw. The point they have, they went to Columbus and got a draw, right? No draw, mind you, but still, they made that happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the same approach. Like, hey, we just need a point. We just kind of need to get this loss at home. Let's just, granted, they just won at Wednesday here at home against El Salvador, so that'll give them some good momentum going in. But I think it'll still be. I think they'll be looking for a draw. Let's just get in there. Let's just, get a point. Maybe a crazy goal goes in. Deflected goal. You never know, right? Hey, we've seen crazier things happen.
Jesus, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for the time, man. It was great having you on and catching up with you after all this time. We'll have to do it again soon. I think these teams play again later this season, so we'll get you lined up. We'll get you lined up then. But for now, thank you for the time. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you so much, Ari. Yeah, be easy. Peace.
Take care. That was Jesus Acevedo Jr., Houston Dynamo expert. Really appreciate his time giving us I follow the whole league pretty closely, and then I just had like my facts totally. Ben Olsen, second year was last year. He's in his third year. But yeah, like Jesus said, he won Open Cup and has I thought the whole storyline of how good is soccer, how like aesthetically pleasing of soccer the Dynamo were playing with Ben Olsen as their coach was pretty funny because he was known always as so far the opposite. But great insight on the Dynamo there. Feel like I get a lot better handle on what's going on with these teams by talking to people in other markets. So always good to get that insight. All right. The next thing I wanted to do tonight, guys, was dive into some sound from Brian Schmetzer. Got some sound from Brian Schmetzer. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, Schmetz was asked by my Lobbing Scorchers kickoff co-host every Monday at 8 a.m., Nico Moreno, about the Jesus Ferreira discourse. And I guess I'll just set the stage real quick. The title of our last podcast was, is it time to be concerned about Jesus Ferreira? And the reason that became a topic of discussion was, so Ferreira got his first start of the season at the number 9 spot in this last game at St. Louis out of necessity with Jordan Morris's injury, but also that was something that they were going to have to try running eventually. I think they're still trying to figure out what his best fit is, what his best role is on this team. So it didn't look super great, which is honestly, I mean, I said it on the podcast, but that's not the craziest thing in the world to me that him running at that position for the first time would look a little rough or not quite there yet. But I think the reason that it became a topic was how he was acting on the field, and the fact that it looked like his frustration was boiling over and getting the best of him a little bit. There was a sequence where VAR was looking at giving him a red card because it looked like he jabbed a guy in the stomach. There was also a couple other instances where he was getting into it with guys off the ball. And then at the halftime whistle, right before the halftime whistle, he shoulder checked a guy to get what I think was honestly a pretty justifiable yellow card, and then he crashed out at the ref. So these are all things that we could all see. It looked like a frustrated player, and then he also came off at 60 or so minutes again, which has been a recurring theme this season. And to this point, maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but to this point, I believe Schmetz had not been. He'd been saying that there was no fitness issue or minutes restriction. It was more just like getting him up to speed type stuff. But Nico asked him about it at training. It was either earlier today or yesterday. And Schmetz addressed all of this. So I'm gonna play the Schmetz sound and then react to it. Tell you guys what I think. Just gonna pull it up right here. Here we go. This is Brian Schmetzer talking about the Brian Schmetzer's take on the Jesus Ferreira discourse.
Speaking of emotions and what you saw, it felt like in this particular game, there was some frustration with Ferreira. There seemed to be, out of what you saw, what were your takes on Ferreira and his emotions?
Right.
Yeah.
I thought he was fine. Look, nobody was happy in the middle of that game because we were outpossessing them without any end product. And look, let's just set the expectations for Jesus, because it was his first real go around as a number 9. And we watched the film. There were 2 or 3 moments where we could have played him the ball that we didn't. There were some things that he could have done maybe a little bit better, but that's all going to come in time, because he's a smart soccer player and he's going to figure it out. The team's going to figure out how he plays that position differently than Jordan and differently than Danny Masowski, who came on and ran around and did his job. So it's just going to be different. So for me, my expectations, I thought Jesus was good. You know, some of the off the ball stuff, I'll talk to him, but that's, again, it's emotion. That shows to me that he was in the game and he wants to win. That's what that showed to me. Is it obviously the way I want him to show his emotions? Because he can't get a red card or yellow card. That'll cost us. But I didn't mind it.
What do you
Go ahead.
I just wanted to, just to follow up on that one. Why do you feel like maybe Jesus hasn't gotten more competitive minutes at the 9 position?
Well, look, he's been on a minute restriction from the beginning. The rotation got thrown off with De La Vega. Jordan's injury certainly threw him off, but that stretch of 3 games in 7 days, threw us all for a loop, because De La Vega, Jordan, and then maybe we're a little gun shy. Maybe we don't want a third guy to go down injured because he started 2 games in a row. So there's some interesting things for the sports science guys to go over, because we've never had 3 games with that much travel in that block of time. And then you put the 4th game in St. Louis after an emotional loss, and it's 4 tough games. So he's going to, look, I can tell you this much, he's going to play a lot of minutes now.
So there you have it. Brian Schmetzer's take on the Jesus Ferreira discourse. Good job by my co-host Nico asking those questions. I think Schmetz sounded a little defensive, but I honestly think that he struck a good balance in terms of his like demeanor towards the question of, going. I expect him to go to bat for his player. That's not a shock to me. Expect him to go back at bat for his player, but to me it seemed like he at least understood that the question was coming and got why it was coming. Like, he was giving Nico a little bit of a hard time, but he didn't. I don't think he did anything that indicated that he thought the question was unfair, and he had to have known it was coming, because the off the ball stuff was one of the talking points coming out of that game. It was like, which is not great, but that's the reality. So I guess I want to talk about first his take on that. He was basically saying, like, those incidents off the ball, I'm going to talk to him about it. I don't really necessarily want to see that either. but it shows me that he's a competitor and that he wants to win. That was basically the sentiment that Schmetz was given, which I think that is one way to look at it. But what I was saying on the pod, or at least what I was trying to get at, is there's a fine line with that stuff between being a competitor and playing with emotion and playing with fire and wanting to win, and crossing a line where you are either hurting your team or just expending your energy on the wrong things. And in my opinion, he was, I don't think anyone would disagree or dispute that he was towing that line. And it looks to me, I don't know. It looked to me like he was getting in the territory of crossing that line. And he was getting into a situation where, like, they were reviewing that stomach jab for a red card. They were. He could have got sent off right there. He didn't, and I think it would have been harsh, but that's the risk you run when you lose your cool like that. And again, I already said this as well, but like for me, it's not about like lecturing the guy about his attitude or being you need to play with sportsmanship. That's not what it is. Like I said, what it is that when you are expending your energy getting into disputes with guys off the ball, crashing out at the ref, you are putting your energy towards things that are, it's not helping you score goals. It's not helping you win the game. So like I said, it's just a fine line. And I don't like, okay, one thing I do want to say though, is like, I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth on this, because I've been saying for years that this team needs a little more nastiness to it, like a little more guys who play with edge, like really like Ozzy Alonso type characters. Like the team is a little too nice. It's a little too nice. It hasn't had these guys. It hasn't had enough dogs, And I think Ferreira being a guy who's got a little bit more of an edge to him, great. All for it. I want him to play with fire, want him to play with emotion. I want him just obsessed with winning, obsessed with scoring goals to the point where, it's like his all-encompassing obsession. But like, you just got to know where that line is. And if you cross it, it's to the detriment of yourself and the team. It's ultimately self-defeating if you get sent off in a situation like that, or you toy with getting sent off in a situation like that. So I see what Schmetz is saying, and he said, to be fair, he said he's going to talk to Ferreira about that. And I guess the way I see it is that this was really one game where this has been an issue. I don't think there's been stuff like this in his previous games with this team. And I understand why he was frustrated, like fundamentally. Like Schmetz said, they were outpossessing the other team with no end product. He's playing his first game at the 9. He wants to show what he can do. So I get why he was getting frustrated, but you just can't let that get the best of you. And he was, like I said, man, he was teetering on that edge. He almost got sent off. So that's why it was a talking point. Credit to Schmetz for, he seemed irritated at the question for sure, but I've seen him snap an ego harder than that. Like, I think he understood where the question was coming from. So that aspect of it, we'll just see what happens, because like you said, Ferreira is going to be playing a lot going forward with the injury situation. So what I want to see from him, aside from continuing to find his footing on this team, find how he fits on this team, figure out how he's best used on this team, I want to see him play with fire and emotion without crossing the line. That can be hard to do, but that's what you have to do. It's part of being a pro at this level. So I'm not gonna brand him as a malcontent or a guy who like can't control himself or anything like that based off one game. I think there was people were talking about attitude stuff at FC Dallas. I really, to my knowledge, and I watched him a lot when he was on FC Dallas, that stuff wasn't really like a huge problem with him throughout his FC Dallas career. Besides, I think other than at the end of his time there, I think relations between club and player were soured. And at that point, there might have been some quote unquote attitude stuff. But as far as I know, it hasn't been a huge theme of his career or anything like that. So we'll see what happens. Now, the other thing people were talking about with this sound, though, was the minutes restriction, which is kind of funny that he just said that casually, like, well, he's been on a minutes restriction the entire time. Okay. That was not told to anybody. And in fact, I'm pretty sure Nico has been grilling Schmetz about this. Like, why isn't he playing more? Why isn't he playing more? Is it fitness? Is it about like something he needs to do in the training? Like, why does he keep coming out at 60? And then finally to like in this last interview, Schmetz is like, oh, he's been on a minute restriction the whole time. I mean, that's what I assumed. I'm not shocked to hear that when you think about the fact that US Soccer put out a statement slandering him for not being fit. And then he's been clearly on a minutes restriction his entire beginning of his Seattle tenure. It makes sense. Why is it why is that a secret or something that you wouldn't just say from the beginning? That's what I don't get. Like, but like he dropped that as if the implication hadn't been the opposite, you know? So I'm assuming that he's going to be playing a full complement of minutes going forward. Schmetz said that, and it's kind of by necessity at this point. And for me, like, I think he's got to be, they have to keep running him at the 9 in a first choice 11 and try and get that figured out. I think they seem to think his best position is like dropping deeper than that and being more of a facilitator, which that's the big thing that I've always liked about his game is how unselfish he is. And I think we have, if I were to give a positive of the Jesus Ferreira Sounders experience so far, which I think, like, to be fair, I don't think this last game wasn't great, but like there's been good moments. He had a really nice assist in the LAFC game, for instance, and in the Antigua series, for whatever that's worth. I know people are going to say it doesn't count because it was a Guatemalan side, but I think in that series in particular, that's where I was like, all right, he actually looks like he's fitting in well right now. He and Areola obviously seem to have a connection because they played together a lot, but also I think in general, it looked like he was contributing to the attack in a positive way as a facilitator, even if the goal scoring hadn't come yet. But at this point, with Jordan out and Moose, God love him, not having not staked his claim as the starting 9, I think you got to keep running him and try and figure this out. So that's basically, I think, where things stand on the Jesus Ferreira discourse. If you've got takes on that Jesus Ferreira discourse, go ahead and drop them in chat. Try and get through a couple of chats right now. And just saying, guys, if you do drop a super chat, I am guaranteed to read your comment or question. I'll read some of them anyway. I'm not making it a condition. Just saying. Jesus Ferreira, TR says, Jesus Ferreira needs to step up and coaching staff need to figure out how to use him. Both are true, in my opinion. Yeah, exactly. It's not even just like the coaching staff, it's all hands on deck. He's got to play a role in that. Other guys on the team have got to play a role in that. And they just got to figure it out because the injury situation is savage right now, guys. It is. De La Vega and Jordan being out at the same time is about as unideal as it gets for this team offensively. That's the unfortunate reality of where things stand right now. So, look, if you ask me to predict if they are going to figure it out, I know some people are probably skeptical right now because the St. Louis game didn't go super great. But I think what Schmetz said at least has a decent chance of being accurate in that he is a player who one of his strongest attributes throughout his career is his soccer IQ. He's a very smart player. He knows how to adapt to different situations. He did so a lot at FC Dallas. There's a lot of like precedent to look at here. And I have no doubt the ability is within him to unlock all that stuff on this team. Like I said, that stuff, I know we all want instant gratification with these things. And I know some people are frustrated because a lot of what this signing was billed as was this is a guy who can theoretically hit the ground running for Champions Cup more because of his MLS experience and that he's played with Paul Arriola and has all this MLS experience. He's the CONCACAF God, Pirate of the Caribbean, and that stuff didn't really pan out in CCC, and it looks like there's going to be more of an adaptation process. So I understand why people would be frustrated with that. I do think in these situations, there is unfortunately oftentimes the reality that like when you are adapting to a whole new team, there's a process that comes with that. And I think we are still, as it stands today, within the bounds of a normal timeline for that adaptation process. However, the necessity of it being expedited is certainly there now. I think with a healthy Jordan and with a healthy De La Vega, you have a lot more leeway, right? But they do need to figure it out. They do need to figure it out. Coming up on an hour 10 now. I only had one more topic written down for tonight. So might just hit that and start the old wrap-up process. If you guys have any comments, takes, questions, observations, or agendas, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Get to as many as I can. Hunch Punch says, give me Jesus Ferreira up top, Georgie and Jordan Morris on the wings eventually, and CR and AR central midfield, and let's see what they cook. Ooh, so under this scenario, we've got a Broldon double pivot. I don't know if they've ever ran that, but that would be sick. To me, it looks like the ideal lineup is with Jordan as the 9, and then like Ferreira can be listed like out wide in a 4-2-3-1. Realistically, what I envisioned when they traded for him is him playing off of Jordan as kind of a second striker, and then also using his attributes as a facilitator as kind of a number. He's a very like multifaceted player. He has a lot of attributes of a number 10 and a false 9, second striker. Maybe not as much as a pure 9, but I feel like Kalani had to do most of the work on that assist that Ferreira gave him. I mean, yeah, KKR's individual effort is what really led to that goal, but like that is a good, I'm not going to do the like that assist didn't count because the other guy did. That is a good ball over the top. That's exactly the type of facilitating I want to see him doing, especially if he's going to be playing deeper like this. Like I think that moment that is good. That was good. What he did on that play was good. Tactical withholding. Are you talking about Schmetz tactically withholding the minutes restriction? So yeah, that was one thing that I was thinking is maybe it's something where he's trying to not tip off other teams on his tactics or his lineups or whatever. But I just thought that was He's been on a minutes restriction the whole time. Did you guys not know that? Been on a minutes restriction. What are you talking about? I like to. I wish I'd been there to see Nico's face when he said that. Minutes restriction. Did I not say that? Did I not tell you guys minutes restriction? Guy's not fit. Didn't you read U.S. Soccer's statement? He's not fit. Minutes restriction. The last topic I had written down, folks, was regarding the Club World Cup. We ruffled a couple feathers with our takes on the Club World Cup in our last podcast. We were talking about the MLS GM's survey. They do an anonymous Athletic. Shout out to the Athletic. They do an anonymous survey every year of all the MLS executives, and they're able to get kind of more like real answers because it's not on the record, right? So, or at least their names aren't on the record. And when Noah was reading me their takes, the anonymous takes, GM takes on Seattle in the Club World Cup, I was detecting, maybe I'm projecting, but I was detecting like a little bit of snark there, Like one guy was like, "Oh, Sounders in the Club World Cup, that's going to be a bloodbath." I could be projecting that tone, but that's what it felt like to me. And there was just a couple other of those things where I'm like, all right, I was getting preemptively. I've been getting preemptively defensive about this because there is a very real scenario where Seattle plays in the Club World Cup. They get boat raced by Atletico Madrid and PSG. And then we're going to have to do this stuff where how embarrassing for the Seattle Sounders and everyone affiliated with them that they went into the Club World Cup against PSG and lost. We're going to have to do that. You guys realize we're going to have to do that even if they don't get boat raced. We had to do that at the last Club World Cup for a game against Al Ali where they played them pretty straight up. Like I remember that. Maybe people remember this differently. I remember the Al Ali game at the Club World Cup that the Sounders played in as a pretty competitive, hard-fought game. Two good teams going at it. Al Ali gets the goal close to the end. That's a GG's. That was my thoughts directly after that game. Of course, I sign on to the timeline, and there's all this like Seattle Sounders crash out embarrassingly rhetoric out there. Like, okay, whatever. I get that that it's come to it. But like we had one commenter, Wade, shout out Wade, friend of the pod. Like Wade's comments because he always comes in with the differing perspective. But he was saying like he was given the point that a lot of people made, which is that like if you sign or they needed to sign better players over the offseason to have a better chance at competing in the Club World Cup, or at least putting on a good showing at the Club World Cup. So to do that, the implication with this take is that they needed to move off Rusnak, upgrade that, not trade for Ferreira, sign someone at a higher level than that theoretically, and then they'll be good to go. If Hanauer wasn't broke and did that, they would be good to go for the Club World Cup. PSG, watch out because we've got a guy who's like a little better than Albert Rusnak, and then and the number 9 who's like a little better than Jesus Ferreira. Now we're gonna hang with PSG and Atletico Madrid. So I guess I'll just give my take on that take first, which is that like I hate to burst anyone's bubble, but moving like take all the Rusnak discourse that we have helped fuel out of it. Like if you're going to say that there's 1 to 2 signings that if they showed more threw their financial weight around more and signed these 2 guys that are theoretically upgrades on Albert Rusnak and Jesus Ferreira, you're going to have to name what guys you're talking about that you think move the needle that much to where the calculation going into this tournament is any different than it is with the roster as it is right now. Because I'm going to tell you right now, people are going to talk about like the signings that Seattle should have made that could have changed how this tournament is going. Those signings don't exist, man. They just don't. They don't. You could sign a guy who's like worth $20 million more than Rusnak, and you could sign a guy who's worth $20 million more than Ferreira, and those two guys alone, like, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't. Like, realistically, there's two ways that the calculation going into the Club World Cup changes. It's you either sign Lionel Messi himself and three of his best friends from the Barcelona clubs that were the best teams that have ever played this game. You sign those four guys, and then they attract every elite prospect from South America, and you create the greatest MLS roster ever assembled. You improve on the roster that literally broke the points record last year, and you build the whole thing around the greatest player of all time. And then, yeah, you should have a chance at honestly throwing down against anybody at the Club World Cup. I think Inter Miami, as currently constituted with how freaking stacked they are, I'll be interested to see how they'll do if they get a chance to play. Like, their group doesn't have like clubs like PSG and Atletico, but eventually if they make it out of their group and advance far in the tournament, they're going to be playing teams like that. We'll see how it goes. Maybe they get boat raced. Maybe I'm wrong. I feel like their team is good enough to like really, it should be the expectation that they at least are competitive in a game like that. That is how stacked their roster is. But they're the only team who can do that. Like, sign Messi and his boys, and then every elite South American prospect on top of that is not a repeatable blueprint or strategy that other clubs can just copy. You can't. That is a very highly unique situation. And that's why, frankly, I was giving them a hard time about not getting the spot on merit like Seattle did. And I'm still going to give them a hard time about that because they crashed out of CCC last year when they could have earned this spot. But like, if you ask me any MLS club that you could put at a showcase event like this, where you're trying to showcase the league, you're trying to like showcase the big stars, like, there's no other choice than Inter Miami right now. That's just when you make the moves that they've made, that's I think it's fair. Honestly, it's fair because they've showed that they're about it. But like I said, like, you can't replicate that. To me, the only other way that you can compete realistically in any meaningful degree, or like have getting out of the group be an expectation. Maybe you never know what could happen. Like, I don't want to say that Seattle's for sure not going to make it out of the group. Like, they might but that would be based more on like freak stuff happening, because anything can happen in a given game, more than their roster being in any type of place where they could like be expected to match up with teams like this. But to me, the way I see it, you would either need to do the exact Inter Miami blueprint complete with signing Lionel Messi himself, or you would need, like, we are talking like PSG, man, like, just look at their wages, man. Like, just look at them. You would have to sign to realistically have the expectation be advanced past teams like that. I think you would need to sign like 8 to 10 guys. That's how many, which would involve the MLS roster rules being just very different than they are now. Am I wrong? Like that is upgrading on Rusnak and upgrading on Ferreira wouldn't not even be remotely close to in the ballpark of mattering in this scenario. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't. They could have done that, and it would be the exact same outcome. So that's just how I see it, man. That's just how I see it. And that's why like I said, I'm getting preemptively defensive because, like, let's be real. There's a pretty feasible outcome where Seattle gets rolled on by Atletico and PSG. I don't care that much, man. I just don't. We're talking about like differences in roster spend that are staggering. They're astronomical. So unless FIFA was going to gift FIFA or the league is going to gift you like 8 guys, it's pointless to it's pointless to even discourse about. Like, it is what it is. And I don't really want to I want to hear about how much of a disgrace it is or how broke Hanauer is or whatever if they lose to Atletico and PSG. Like, what are we talking about? My criteria, I'll tell you guys what my criteria is for a successful Club World Cup, which is just don't abjectly embarrass yourself in the city. Which, so honestly, like, so that, like, let me be clear. Taking an L in this situation, people are going to throw the adjective embarrassing around if and when they lose to PSG. Embarrassing would be like looking like you have never been on a soccer field and you're just like kicking them the ball and letting them like, just don't do shit like that. Compete as hard as you can. Try and get a result, obviously. Put on as good a showing as you can for the league and the city. Let the chips fall where they may. If you take the L, you take the L. I am not going to get on the boys for losing to PSG. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not. Other people are free to. TRUR, if you think signing another superstar like CR7 wouldn't help. You think signing Ronaldo is what would do it? 40-year-old Ronaldo, that would not do it. It would not. You need, like, that's the thing. Like, one superstar isn't it, like, it might help a little bit, but it would not do it. It's a team game. Like, you cannot, in a situation like this, you cannot 1-2 player your way into changing your chances all that much. You like, it would take so much more than that. No, man, it's not. There's a middle ground between signing Cristiano Ronaldo and playing Defiance that you can get here. And it's fine to say that it's fine to hold the team to a high standard and have high expectations. I'm just trying to live in reality. It's PSG, man. Like, if the MLS roster rules were not what they are, and you could build a team like with comparable wages to PSG, then yeah, the expectation should be to build a team like that, and it should be to compete in this situation. That's just not the situation that we're in. So if I'm being for real, if we get a quality player that could finish a ball better than Morris, I think we could have a chance. I mean, against who though? I think a lot of what the issue is going to be, like, a lot of what makes this situation like this tough is honestly like the situation defensively. I love Yamar and Jackson Reagan. I think they've been elite center backs in the league. Jackson Reagan was a Defender of the Year finalist for a reason. Yamar is one of the better regarded defenders in the league for a reason. I worry about them going up against attackers like that, like this. Like, that's going to be hard. The degree of difficulty on that is going to be quite high. I think Reese, I think two things can be true. The Sounders defense is quite good for MLS. It's one of the best MLS defenses. And also, if you put them against literally PSG, who are going to be playing their A squad in this tournament, that is a difficult matchup for them. It is. Anyway, I'm not even like I'm not saying it's guaranteed that they're going to bomb out of the group, even because like you can always grind out or poach a result in any given game against any team. It's not preordained. I just maybe it's just more my personality to try and like base my expectations on what I know to be true in reality, which is that they're playing two of the best teams in the world whose roster spend is just light years beyond what they are allowed to do, and that inherently creates a matchup that is difficult to win. Like I said, my criteria, and this is just me, no one has to agree with this. This is just me. My criteria is compete with dignity. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't embarrass the city. Let the chips fall. Do your best to make it out of the group. Not going to crush them for it if they don't. And again, I think it's a flawed premise to say that, oh well, if we upgraded on this guy or on this one guy or that one guy or these two guys, like why didn't they do that? Then the Club World Cup would be ours. I think probably not. Anyway. That's how I see it. All right, coming up on an hour and a half here. I'm going to start the process of winding down this edition of Lobbing Scorchers under the lights, which you guys know what that means. That means I gotta play the lo-fi. I gotta play the lo-fi. If you've got any last questions, topics, stuff you want me to hit before I get out of here, go ahead, drop it in chat. We can keep doing the Club World Cup discourse if you guys want. Going in with the mindset that it's a lost cause just makes the Club World Cup entirely useless at this point. Drop out. I mean, I don't know what you want. Like, I don't think it depends what you define as lost cause. I don't consider it a lost cause if they play in it and lose to PSG and Atletico Madrid. I think it's still like like I said, I think I said this on the podcast. I've always been curious just what would it look like if the Sounders with their roster as constituted played against PSG. I think if you asked me to pick that matchup, I would pick them to lose. I would. But I am looking forward to just getting to see it regardless of how it goes. Let's see. Maybe they do better than, maybe with this roster that they have, they fare better than I'm giving credence to. That's a possible outcome. Could happen. Like, if I'm trying to gauge what I think is going to happen, I think that is just a very high degree of difficulty situation. Talking about literally PSG, but I don't think like the results are necessarily what define if it's a lost cause or not. Like, I think it'll be a good experience for the team. It's a good like platform showcase event to like show what you can do. But like they are going to Atletico, Botafogo, PSG, like they're going to be playing their big dogs, or at least they should be, because the prize for winning this tournament is a lot. So, lower the lo-fi, sorry. Good shout. That's nice and quiet. We just got whooped by Cruz Azul. Anyone who thinks we have a remote chance in this is in the clouds. You never know what can happen in an individual game. Some bullshit could happen. But they're like, if you think that there's any chance in any dimension that they're not going to be pretty vastly overmatched in terms of raw talent, just look at the money, man. Look at the money. That's all you need to look at. The way this sport works is pretty simple sometimes. They explain it in soccernomics. Literally, you spend the most, you win the most. That's it. That's why I've never gotten really into European soccer. What I like about European soccer is it is kind of fun watching super stacked teams play because they play really beautiful ball. But in terms of being invested in the results, it's literally just based on who has the highest roster spend. You can go down the list most years in all those big leagues that have no cap, just free reign. You literally, the team that spent the most gets first, wins the league. Team that spent the second most gets second. Team that spent the third most gets third. That's pretty much the whole league. I don't really see what's all that compelling about that. I think they got to salary cap that shit. Maybe that's not as true anymore. I don't know. I haven't been following it, but I know there was like years upon years where it was an exact straight line like that. Salary cap leagues, they don't work like that. That's why the salary cap is better, man. It is. Yeah, you don't get to just build as stacked a team as you want, but there's strategy to it. And it's more, I think MLS maybe is too far the opposite. Like there's like been too much parity over the years. But just whoever the best team is, just being the team that literally spends the most. It's a preordained outcome is what it is. You literally know who's going to win the league, or at least the 4 to 5 teams that have a chance before you go into every season. EPL fans in chat, how do you tell me? How do you like still get hype on that when you already know what's going to happen? Like you have the Leicester City stuff, which happened one time, but same. Never watched outside the U.S. with any passion, one exception. The Euros are the best soccer tournament in the world. Yeah, like that's the merit to it. Like honestly, watching a team like Man City, who has the highest spend in the world, and they've literally every player in their starting lineup is one of the 2 best players at their position in the entire world. It makes them functionally, or it's made them at least in the last. I feel like maybe they're not having as good a year this year. I don't know. I don't follow the Prem at all. But like it makes them fun to watch. I enjoyed the footy they play is second to none. I watched the behind the scenes Man City doc, and I thought there was some interesting stuff like in terms of I really enjoyed actually getting to watch how Pep operates. I always had this perception of Pep as a super like hard ass and like is like so obsessed with winning that he doesn't enjoy his job. He doesn't enjoy his life. He really is not like that at all. If you watch the Man City Netflix doc, Pep is like a vibe merchant. He's a vibe merchant. When they do the footage of him running a Man City training session, he's having the time of his life. And when the team does something really well at practice, he gets so happy. He's like, guys, this is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. You are all so beautiful. I love you all so much. Like that's like Pep is kind of a fun guy sometimes. At least that's what it seemed like in the doc. So Leicester won the league, but I mean, come on, that was like a once in a freaking millennium event. I still don't get how that happened. That was the one year where I locked in on the Prem because I kept being like, are they really going to do this? There's just no way. That flies against everything that I know from Soccernomics. They can't do that. And then they did. But like, let's be honest, like that was not something that really happens ever. Yeah. 1 in 5,000. Madrid and Barca have won the majority of La Liga for the last 60 years. It's stupid. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, it is what it is for them and their fans and their league, but like, I don't know how you, like, if you're a fan of a team that's not them, why would you care? Why would you go to the games? Why would you watch the games? You literally already know what's going to happen. Oh, Bayern Munich. Remember Bayern Munich won it like 10 years in a row. Really cool league. Cool league. You have one team that has a chance. You have two teams that have a chance, but realistically one team that has a chance. Bores me. Yeah, Valencia fan. Exactly. I don't know. All right, guys. I'm going to call it right there. Thank you all so much, as always, for tuning in. I love the Under the Lights crowd. Don't tell anyone else, but you guys are my favorite. I love the kickoff crowd too. No one who's in the kickoff crowd get mad. But this one's for the sickos. Appreciate you all locking in for the USMNT punditry. That was fun. Good stuff as always. Shout out Jesus Acevedo Jr. coming on talking some Dynamo with us. Please, if you haven't, like the video. That really helps us in the algo. Sub to the channel if you haven't. Like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. Shout out to our sponsors, Hacks on Ferments, Podium Menswear, Full Pull Wines. If you make an order from Hacks and Ferments and use our code LS, you get a free bottle of hot sauce with your order, and it's really good. 1-0 Sounders on Saturday. That'd be sick. Live calls on Saturday. Maybe. I'm going to have to talk to Noah and coordinate a little bit. I'm going to be at the game on Saturday, which that makes it harder for me to jump on live right post game. I kind of got to, I mean, last time I called in, gave like a quick take, but realistically to sit down, I have to head home from the stadium, which takes a minute. I'm not sure if Noah's not planning on going, maybe he can jump on and take some calls. So that's just going to be a TBD situation. But Wade, if we don't do it on Saturday, I mean, we're going to do it again soon. We've been doing those shows where we take calls. So I'll make sure everyone is appraised. Make sure everyone is aware when that's going on. I am going to be in the press box all game. So I can't visit the brigade in ECS, unfortunately. But Hunch Punch, thank you very much for the support. Appreciate you. We're going to keep grinding the content. There is no break for the content. We ball every week. All right. With that, I'm going to get out of here. Have a good night, everybody. Appreciate you. Peace.
The Seattle Sounders' brand new 2025 kit is here. Inspired by two traditional Southern Coast Salish weaving techniques, twilling and twinning. These techniques, passed down through generations, honor the resilience, deep-rooted ties, and creativity that define the cultural fabric of this region. The striking deep blue jersey will be worn by the Sounders for the next 2 seasons to honor the club's deep connection with the Puget Sound and shared responsibility as stewards of the Greater Salish Sea watershed. Backing up that commitment, the Seattle Sounders will donate up to $50,000 to benefit community charities around the Puget Sound region. To get your very own Salish Sea kit, visit lobbingscorchers.com/kit. That's lobbingscorchers.com/KIT.